Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Green Living Chats podcasts. We are your hosts, David Ewusi Mensah and Daniel Hagen. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about the dilemma of the graduate scholar. Should we be moving from academia to the industry or from industry to academia? This transition is causing a lot of headaches for many graduates. And so today we have an expert who is going to talk to us about his transition and for us to get some ideas about what to do with our own experiences. Today we are very excited to have Dr. Desmond Anim. Dr. Anim is an experienced environmental water resource engineer and researcher with over 15 years of expertise at the forefront of sustainable water resources management. His career bridges academia, industry, and government, where he is committed to advancing practical climate-resilient solutions for water sustainability in the face of urbanization and climate change. Dr. Anim's current role in government focuses on translating knowledge into actionable water management policies that addresses today's most pressing water challenges to contribute to a path toward a resilient, livable, and sustainable future. In his overall experience, he has moved from the university into industry and now in the federal government, where he is involved in policy making that affects the environment. Therefore, we think that he is one of the perfect examples to share his experiences with us and give us some tips on what we could expect if we are to stay in academia, to move into industry, or possibly even into policy making. Join us as we speak with Dr. Anim. Here we go. First thing we want to do, which is a very GLC-oriented way of starting, is we want to learn your story. What has been the journey for you? You can go as far back as possible. Maybe you can start from primary school.
I remember you mentioned I shouldn't talk about nursery stories. Yeah. Yeah, for me, I would say up until 2020, I would say my life has been just academic, right? So, like you said, it starts right from primary school. Yeah. So I did my primary, middle school, high school, and university in Ghana, West Africa. As a young man, I did my primary education. I went to government private school, did my
Hey,
primary education.
BBA.
uh, it was some small local private school. Yeah, just some small backdoor primary local private school. Yeah, so yeah, I did my primary education in Kumasi, back in Ghana. Then continued to a Catholic school for my middle school, St. Louis, Jesus. Did 3 years, year 7 to year 9. I was no, is it? Yeah, year 7 to year 9. So that is middle school, or in other places they call it the junior high school. Yeah. Then went to Okes, Osei Secondary School, also in Kumasi, studied science. I remember I wanted to go to Prempeh College. Yeah. I wanted to go to Prempeh College. Yeah, I had a very good friend back in middle school. We're very, very good friends, and we all had plans to go to Prempeh College. And if you remember back I completed my middle school in 2002. And if you, I don't know, anyone that remembers back in Ghana, that was the first batch that's there just as the BC that we call the basic education certificate exams was cancelled, right? Yeah, it was cancelled.
Oh,
Yeah, it was cancelled, because of
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
things
yeah,
that
yeah.
happened during that time. They say there are a lot of massive national examination or practices. So the examination council just decided that, okay, nah, we're just going to cancel everything. You guys need to go back to school again and just write it again. I remember at that time, I was so excited that when I finished the first one, I was so excited. I was just going to get the required grade for me to go to my favorite school. Then all of a sudden we heard the news that we have to come back to school, rewrite the exams.
Oh no.
I lost all motivation because my mind and everything, I've left that place, right? So for the thought of going back there was so tormenting for me. I remember from that point till the time that we wrote the second one, and I'm being honest here, I never studied. I never studied because I was so discouraged. I was like, what is the
Yeah,
point? What is there to study again, right? I feel like I've done everything so I was like, I'm not going to open book. I remember I had so much issues with my dad, like, and I remember because of what happened, my school, they just selected the best student, like the top 20, and they provided accommodation. It wasn't a boarding school, but they provided special accommodation because they're like, you guys need to make it for us. I remember, I used to sneak out. I'm like, I'm not going to study. Like when I open a book, I just feel discouraged. Right.
yeah.
So I didn't. So at the end of the day, long story short, the results came. I got a lot of two, two, two. Like middle school is like one, one, one. I got a lot of two. At the end of the day, I think I got like a grade 9 or so, and it wasn't good enough for me to get me into my prep college. Right, my
Oh,
best friend got 9 once. He made
oh,
it. And I remember my dad attended Prempeh College, so it made sense. Like because back at home, that's all that he talks about. He
oh,
had all his stuff from Prempeh College. So I've grown to know Prempeh College, even though I've never set foot there, but I've grown to know because of my dad. So when it's happened that I couldn't go, I was so sad. I remember I was so sad. And so they were like, okay, what do you want to study? I was like, I have to do science, science is what I want to do. So they're like, nah, aggregate 9, it's gonna be difficult, but we will try. So the guy who was just leading managed to got me an admission, but when it came out, it was business. Right. For me, I just wanted to go. I didn't care. I was ready to throw away my science dream, my dream to study science. I was like, I want to go to this school. I don't care, even if it's home econs, I'll go and do it. So
oh,
yeah, but my dad was like, no, I know
yeah,
that you've always wanted to you've always wanted to do science. So nah, you're not going to go, so let's go for I don't even remember what I selected for my second choice or third choice. I don't even remember. So but my dad, I forced myself to want to go, but my dad was like, no. So my dad was like, you want to do science, you are very good. It doesn't matter where you do it. And then at that point, that story didn't sit well with me because I know that for us to make it, you have to go to one of these schools, the
yeah.
Prempeh, the Achievements, the WAS, so I was like, nah,
Hey, hey,
I
hey, you
have
forgot to mention the important one.
the
The
fancy
most,
pants, yeah.
yeah.
I'm really surprised. I'm here staring at him.
Ah,
Yeah, don't worry, I'm a Kumasi boy, so there's a little bit of bias there. So long story short, my dad, prevented me from going to Prempeh College. He stood in the way. I always say
it's a
that he
very
stood
good
in the
dad.
way. He doesn't like it when I say it, when I put it that way, but in hindsight, it's different now. So yeah, so I went to OKS. OKS gave me science. So I went there. So for me, it was kind of like a chip on the shoulder for me because OKS was not known to be academically good school. It was more about sports, and they were known to be good in other areas like the business, and the arts, but science, it was not known. But when I went to high school, it was kind of like a chip on my shoulder. I was like, I didn't go to one of the best schools, but I'm going to make sure that I do my best so that at the end of the day, I'll come out, and be able to achieve the results like any other person who went to any other student, like my friend, my best friend, and other thing. So I went to Okes or Secretary High School, did science for 3 years, came out, got good grades. Um, and at that time, when I went to high school, I had always wanted to be a pharmacist, right? I had always wanted to be a pharmacist, but I we had this biology teacher who made me hate biology. This teacher would just come. He had his own book that he wrote. He forced all of us to buy it. He come to
Yeah.
the class, hey, open to page this, chapter this, and we start reading. So I was like, it wasn't fun for me because that wasn't how I enjoyed the way learning. Right, I wanted to
Mm.
be. I was very inquisitive. I want to be challenged, but I just realized that he just wanted us to just read a book, what in Ghana we call chew and pour, right? So right from year 10, high school, SS1, year one, I didn't like biology. So then I just decided I'm not going to do anything. So then I knew that for me to be able to do pharmacy, I need to be very good in biology, right? So I was like, okay. So right from SS1, I changed my mind that I was going to do engineering. Right. So my main
Nice.
focus was on physics, chemistry, because I knew that was what the university looked like. It look at if you're going to do engineering, physics, chemistry, pure mathematics. So yeah, so that was the journey for me from high school. I finished. I went to one of the best school, the best university in Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. I'm
Yeah.
glad that all of you here
Yeah.
attended the same school, so I'm not going to get any pushbacks here. Yeah. So yeah, so then I went to the university, studying engineering, majored in geomatic engineering.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
yeah, I have
Yeah.
one geomatic engineering. Funny
Yeah.
story, that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do petroleum engineering. I wanted to do petroleum engineering. Yeah. But I remember I got grade 10, or no, I got grade 9, and I didn't at that time they wanted the cutoff was 8. But it was so funny that I didn't apply for it. My dad was like, apply for chemical engineering because it's the same thing, right? I was like, nah, petroleum engineering at that time was new. I think it was just up to 3 years at that point. My dad was like, just apply to chemical engineering. The cutoff point is 10, right? Petroleum is 8. And funny enough, chemical engineering, they got a lot of quality application that
Mm.
even though on paper the cutoff point was 10, they selected out to aggregate 8. So that means I was
Wow.
cut off. And petroleum
Chai.
engineering, they selected out to aggregate 10. Right? So
Oh.
for me, I was so sure I was going to get a chemical engineer. I didn't care what my second choice and third choice. So I just selected anything. So so sorry that so geometry engineering was one of the things that I just put on paper. Like I had no idea what it was. I remember when I was applying, it was even geodetic engineering at that time. Then I think when we came in, they changed it to geomatic. I was like, what?
Daddy is coming after you.
I was like, just put it there. Geometry. I'm like, I know I was going to get my chemical engineering, whatever that I put there. I don't even remember what was my third choice. But God has his own ways of doing things. I didn't get it. I got into geometry. I remember my first year of uni was one of the miserable years in my life. Because when you get into something you have no passion for, you have no idea. Like it's not something that you
Yeah.
research it, but they just
Yeah.
give it to you. Go and do it. This is what you. So my first semester, no, my first semester at uni, I was like, and doing that, I remember we had to do all this surveying, it
Yeah.
was very, very, we had to go to the
Yeah.
bush, do all this. I was like, oh my God, what is this? What am I remember I told my dad I want to reapply again, like even if because my dad encouraged me. And I got there was one friend that I had in uni who also encouraged me, told me about the prospect and all that. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. Then I think when I got to my second year, we started doing, courses like GIS, remote sensing. I was like, oh, okay, there's a little bit flex in this course. It's
Mm.
not all about, going to the bush to do land
Yeah.
surveying and all that. I was like, okay. So that
Bush
was when I
surveyor.
started building. That was when I started building the interest in the course. I was like, okay, so I started, getting more into the GIS and the remote sensing stuff. So I would say that's where my interest built in that geomatic aspect of things. I graduated, was a teaching assistant, and I was teaching GIS. I was teaching GIS, at
Oh, okay. With Kwe Ballard,
yeah.
huh?
With no, Dr. Fuku at that time. At that time,
Oh,
Ballard
okay, okay,
was,
okay,
I
okay.
think, yeah, Ballard
Ah,
was
Ballard
there,
was
but
cartography, yeah. He
Ballard
was
was teaching
cartography.
cartography. Yeah,
Yeah,
Ballard
yeah,
was
yeah.
there, but Dr. Fuku was the GIS and
Oh, yeah.
processing guy. Yeah, so I was his teaching assistant. So I did it. I finished in 2010. I did 1 year of national compulsory service where I serve as a teaching assistant at the university. So whilst I was in the university, I knew that after school I knew that I was going to do further studies, right? And I knew that I wanted to do it outside Ghana, right? So whilst I was doing my teaching assistant, I started putting in a lot of application outside, looking for scholarship. My target was the UK. I remember I did a lot of Commonwealth applications and all that, but I
But it
didn't.
wasn't it wasn't
Unfortunately,
common.
it wasn't common. I like that. It wasn't common. Like this, the Commonwealth it's not common. Yeah, I was getting a lot of admission but no scholarship. Sometimes I get half
Okay.
tuition. Sometimes they'll say that, oh, like I remember there was one I even got almost 80% tuition, but they remind that 20%, you know, if I convert it to Ghana city, it was it, it felt like my whole destiny. I have to sell my whole destiny to be able to. It felt like I have to sell my whole destiny to be able to have. So, yeah, I couldn't afford all. So I tried. I remember I almost gave. I was like, maybe. So I started looking into the industry, right? Even though I wanted to, but my heart was still in academia because I had always wanted to be in academia. Lo and behold, there was this. So we have the international program office at Tech, and once in a while, they send emails of opportunities outside. Sometimes no scholarship. So there was one time, like they sent an email that there's this university in China. They've signed an MOU, the K University, and so that to allow K University to send students there or staff, and they can also bring their student and staff to Ghana. So they send it to all the tiers, like whoever is interested. But the caveat was, if you get it, you're going to sign a bond, right? And you have to sign a bond that you come back to be a lecturer. It's like, cool. I want to be in academia. So yeah, it works out for me. Right. So we applied, and by God's grace, I got a scholarship, and the university did everything, finance and everything. And so I went to China, Huhai University in China, Nanjing,
Oh.
yeah, to study environmental engineering. Yeah, so that was a big shift from geomatic, you know, not really a big shift, but
Mm,
just kind of like deviate a little
yeah.
bit, because my interest was in environmental management, right? I did um, my thesis in applying geospatial technology in environmental management. That was what I did for mine. Yeah,
Oh,
so I remember I did it with KMA. We used GIS we develop like a GIS database system, to be able to map out, and all this environmental sensitive at that time, environmental sensitive, features in Kumasi, that. So we did that for them. Uh, so that was where I got that interest in like doing stuff related to environmental and water. So when the opportunity came for me to do further studies, I knew that I was going to do something in that area, not necessarily environmental engineering, but something related to geospatial technology application
yeah.
in the environmental field. So when I got the opportunity to go to China, unlike other places, yeah, you go like in China, like at my time, I think things have changed, but at that
Yeah.
time, you
Yeah.
go there, then the university will assign you to a professor, right?
Yeah.
And whatever the professor is doing, you
Yeah.
have to just pick an interest with that, right? Because it was
Yeah.
very difficult to kind of sell your own interest to them at that time, right? So I remember I got there, I met my professor, and it was like, oh, my research area is in water management, water quality, hydraulics and hydrology. I remember at that time I was like, what is this hydraulics thing? So in my mind I was like, hydraulic engineering, is it not like those
Borehole. Go and
civils,
fetch borehole.
borehole, yeah, those
Go and
kind of stuff.
fetch
I was like,
borehole water.
Charlie, this not what I want to do. so, so he sent me his CV, his papers. I read a couple of abstracts. I was like, oh, okay, okay. So he was like, okay, these are my all my previous work, and this is what I'm working on. Let me know what your interest in, right? Then I read a little bit more about the hydraulic and the hydrology, the eco hydraulics. I was like, oh, cool. This one sounds cool. Even though I had no background, in that, but the idea, sounded like something that's, will be interesting, to entertain at that time. So I told him that I want to do that one. So I picked that one. That's research. They're like, okay, go and do a literature review, you know, all the papers that I do, just go and do a literature review. So I was like, hey, literature review, what is this? Even though back in my undergraduate, I did my thesis and everything, like, but at that time, unfortunately, and that is something that recently I've been talking to a lot of friends, and probably maybe later we'll touch on that, right? When it comes to the way that we are trained, as students, right, in academics, right, back home, we are not real and it saddens me to say this, but we are not really trained to be academically and research inclined, right? So we don't do all these courses related to research, like in overseas, from undergraduate, they do research method, they train them how to do, how
Yeah,
to do literature review and all those kind of stuff. Even like here in primary school, like sometimes my son in grade one will come, say, oh, my teacher has given us this book, say that we should read and write something about it, and that is basically just reading literature, reading something, and picking up how you understand it, what is the background, what was done, what came out of it, and that is the training that we didn't get, right? So when I got there,
mm.
and all of a sudden, like, they give me a lot of paper, I say, go and write a working abstract, and I was like, hey, my goodness. And this man was just, always, and I didn't do like masters of research. It's 1 year coursework and 1 year research. So I was like, okay, first year I'm just going to, just sail through, do my coursework, same as undergraduate. But this man was so much on me, like every day. And I was his first international student, right? I was his
That's
first
right.
international student. So I get, in hindsight, I think what he was trying to do was one, maybe a little bit personal for him. He wanted to make sure that I excel because I'm going to be his first international student, and
Yeah.
he want to make a trophy out of me, kind of, right? To to put it that way. Yeah. So he was like every day this man will be calling me, come to he gave me a seat right in his office to make sure that
Hey.
when I don't have
Wow.
classes, yeah, when I don't have classes, I know David knows him. His name is Professor Yipin. he gave This man gave me a seat in his office, I was the no, I was the no, I wasn't the only one. He had other two Chinese students, and what I found out was like among his students, you see that those who are very good have potential, he would draw them. He had other office for his student, right? But he just selected a few to be in his office. He had a very big office, have a desk for you. Like every day, this man was on me. And I remember um, I almost went to the international office to tell them that, oh, the professor they gave me, I don't like, not because I didn't like, but the way the man was giving me pressure at that time, I wasn't built for that, right? I was like, what is this man doing? It's making me lose interest in this thing, right? But I remember I had a friend in Hohai, Nigerian. His name was James. I hope he's wherever he is. Shout out to James. James was the one he sat me down. Like I used to complain a lot to him, when we are going to each. I was like, oh, my professor is always on me. Man, this man is giving me so much pressure. They're like, Desmond, you are very lucky. I'm like, what do you mean I'm lucky? Say, you are very lucky. A lot of international students have their Chinese supervisors or professors not even giving them the time of the day, right? They
Mm.
can't even find them, some of them, and sometimes it's because of the language barrier.
Yeah.
Some of their professors try to, run away from them, for lack of better word, right? When they try to have an appointment with them, they don't even want to meet them, because they're like, oh, let's talk on the phone, or like Desmond, you have your professor, he's giving you a seat in his office, trying to push you. Desmond, you are so lucky. Don't throw away this opportunity, right? So he kind of shifted my perspective, right? When it comes to
Mm.
that. And I was like, oh wow. So I remember one day I just sat in my room. I was like, and I just kind of reflected on all the things that guy said. I was like, maybe he's right? So then I had a change of mind, right? It was like just that U-turn. And I remember that day it was one cold winter in China. So I remember that day so well. So I had a very, and that it changed my life completely from that day on. I started taking everything serious, from my first year, right? Started doing everything that he asked me to do, reading a lot of papers, doing a lot of literature review and all that. And that kind of expanded my knowledge, right, in the field. And within 1 year, a field that I have had, it has nothing to do with my background, right? When I say my background, I mean my undergraduate background. Within 1 year, I felt like I was kind of like an expert, right? Not there, but I was like, oh, I know so much about this field that I remember he read all the works that I did, and like, oh, let's write a literature review paper. You've done so much. And I was like, what is this man saying? Write a paper.
Mm.
So, what is this? Right? Yeah. So he started training me, and all that. So it and that was really important at that time, because being able to understand the techniques, of taking someone's work, reading it, having that clear understanding of what has been done, what was lacking, and what needs to be added on. That was something that I had no idea of, right? But that training that he gave me helped me to understand that when you take an article, you take a research paper, for you to be able to read it, pick those things up, understand what is the knowledge gap, what has been done, what then, if you want to relate it to your work, what can I do, or what can I add to that knowledge, right? And that was a very big step for me at that time within a short possible time. So yeah, so we started working on that. And when he realized that I was ready, he was like, this one, I don't think we need to wait for you to finish your 1 year coursework. We can start your research right now. And I was like, man, this man is
Wow.
running with me
Promotion.
like Usain Bolt. They're like, oh, I have this project, I've just received the funding for this project, all the stuff that you've written is exactly what I wrote for this project, and it's kind of relate, have a look at it. I remember he gave me the proposal that he wrote for that project. Like, have a look at it. Let me know if you are interested. The funds and everything is ready. Let's start it, right? And it involved. I realized that it involved modeling. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this? I thought we were going to do field work and a little bit of line. We did so like now, but for a lot of people, we realize a lot of people have done a lot of field work, right, in that area, and there's been a lot of laboratory simulation for that particular subject. So what we could add new to it is having taken the advantage that a model will give you to be able to kind of simulate new scenarios, right? Take the data and to be able to calibrate a model and get a very good model, a well calibrated model, and use that to, develop new scenarios and try new ideas. That was where the juice was, right? So it was like, that's if we just do the field work, to just be the gap that we're going to fill. I remember he used to like saying gap. The gap that you're going to fill is very tiny. So and I remember I had to learn that model, EFDC. I have to learn it, and it was really, really something that really, really helped me a lot. I learned the model, that we started doing a lot of stuff. And that was very good. We started getting a lot of data, started publishing, and that was something that I didn't even know I could do at that time. And so I would say that that training was really, really key for my success for my masters. And so that was just a snapshot of my master's life. Then So that I knew that okay, I wanted to do my PhD because I've fallen in love with research. I've fallen in love with academic. I was like, this is where I want to be. I want to stay in here. I want to work in here. So I knew that if this is where I want to be, then this is what I need to do. I need to have my PhD, right? Because that's very important. And I remember when we were living in Ghana, they told us like, oh, if you get an opportunity to do PhD, do it because now if you want to come back as a lecturer, you
Yeah.
have to have a PhD. In the past, like even masters, you could lecture, but later,
Yeah.
since 2011, things were changing. So I got a PhD scholarship in my university. My supervisor was keen to keep me, but it got to a point I was like, I think I need a change of environment. I I need a change of environment. I was like, I want to change. That was the main thing, but I mean, there was other reasons too. Like later, I was like, if I'm going to stay long term, because I knew that like the career that I want to have, you know, I was not so I wanted to be in academia, but not in teaching, right? Teaching was not really, even though I did a little bit of teaching here and there, even in China, my supervisor gave me the opportunity to do teaching, but I realized that no, I want to do research. Research, stay in academia, I want to be a researcher, not really like a lecturer or teaching or a teacher. So I was like, if I go back to Ghana, there's a high chance that I will just be teaching, right?
Mm.
Because one, the funds are not there to promote, doing research. When I was in Ghana, I saw that most of, even not a lot of lecturers were doing research, and even those that were doing, I found out that most of them, you see that they some way somehow they found some money, found somewhere, right? If they managed to get some collaboration between the university and other university abroad or other agencies abroad, get that funding. But locally, it was so difficult. They were not really having that fund. So
Yeah.
those who really had that passion for it, they have to end up using their own money because at the end of the day, they have to write papers to get a promotion. So, and I realized that the kind of research that because of that, it wasn't that they didn't have the ability to do quality
Yeah.
research, right? But the funds were not there. So, but they also
Yeah.
knew that academic the promotion currency is what papers,
Yeah.
right? So I realized that they were writing papers, but the quality was not there, and that is not, you know. Because they were not good per se, but because they didn't have the money to do that quality work to produce that quality output, right? So I made up my decision. Nah, I'm not going back to Ghana. But I knew I have signed a bond to return, right? So
Mm.
I remember when we finished my master, I was like, okay, so it was just a couple of guys, a couple of us. We rode back to the university, like, oh, we finished our masters, so can you guys bring us back home? And I don't know, it was a blessing in disguise. These guys responded to our email like, "Oh, we didn't promise you guys anything. We didn't promise we were going to bring you back. So you guys try and find your way back. When you come, we may talk." I say, we will talk or we may talk. So when I saw that email, like for me, I was excited. I mean, in front of
Yeah.
my friends and everything, I just pretend I was like, I just had this fake anger. I was like, what these people? What, how did they want us to come home? But in my mind, I was excited. I was like, because one of the things was when I made that decision, I wasn't going to back home. I was also worried about that bond that I've signed. I was like, what is the implication if I don't go
Yeah.
back home? What is the implication? So when they gave us that, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a very, very good evidence A, right? For me to use, later if they
Mm.
can. They're like, so I also replied, I was like, okay, if you guys are not going to bring us back, then I'm stuck here. I don't know how I'm going to come home. So I'm like, okay. They're like, so we asked, what about the bond? They're like, when you guys come, we may talk about it. So we knew that these people were not even going to honor that they are part of the bargains. I was like, why do I have to worry? So yeah, so that was for me, that was good for me because I had already made that decision that I wasn't really going to go back because I wanted to put myself in a position where I want to have a very fruitful and a very rewarding career. And if I want to be a researcher, I want to put myself in a position where I can have the resources to be able to do the kind of things that I want to do in the way that I want to do it. And I knew that going back home at that time was not an option for me, right? So I got a scholarship to do my PhD, but I also felt like, nah, I needed a change of environment, right? So I remember when I told my supervisor, because you apply for schools, obviously you need a recommendation. I remember when I told him, it was really a blow for him, because I think for him, he felt like I was his child,
Mm.
kind of like, because I was his first international student. He felt like he has trained me, he's put so much in me that this is the time for him to reap, right? And I
Oh.
also felt like I've done a lot of work with you. We've published a lot of papers, and all that. So I feel like I've also given back to you, So I feel like I've also paid my dues somehow. So so I remember when I told him that I need a recommendation letter from him because I'm applying for schools outside China. He was like, "Oh, why? Is there anything else? Like, why?" Like, he was trying to find if there was anything that he did or something. I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I just wanted a change of environment." So it took a while. I remember the first day he did it. He was like, "Oh, okay, I'll think about it." I was like, "Hey, write a recommendation for me. You're going to think about it." So I think for him, it took him a while to come into terms with the fact that he may lose me, right? So, but lo and behold, he came around and he did it for me. I remember I applied for the when I applied, I was getting a lot of admissions, but unfortunately, I wasn't getting the scholarships, you know. So some of them too, I was getting this tuition with no stipend and other thing. I was like, oh my God, I have a full scholarship here, so I'm not going to take anything less. I don't care if it is, So by God's grace, like I got the Melbourne Uni one. Even that one, when it came initially, the scholarship, it didn't come with scholarship, right? It didn't come with scholarship. I remember I got an email from the professor, because you know how it is. PhD first,
Yeah.
you have to talk to a potential supervisor who will agree to supervise you. So I did all that. So this supervisor, they sent my document to him. He called me. He did an interview with me and everything. He wrote a very good recommendation. I remember he told me that, oh, he's very, very much interested in me. So then they came and like, oh, unfortunately, he didn't get a scholarship. So I called him and I sent him an email. I told him. He was so, I think he called me. He was like, no, because when they brought my document to him, they told him that they are ready to give me scholarship and everything. All that is left for him to talk to me and see whether he likes me or not, right? So he doesn't understand, right? So he was like, oh, so he sent a lot of email, and any email that he sent to the admission and scholarship office, he will copy me, right? And I could see that this guy was pushing. I was like, wow, this guy was really pushing for me. But the school was like, oh, unfortunately, I applied in a second round of the scholarship, and that one is very competitive because usually they have two rounds of scholarship, and they usually give 80% of the scholarship out for the first round. So the second round, if you apply the second round, is usually very competitive. So like, oh, so then he came back to me. I was like, this is the situation, right? But I believe that you can get that scholarship, right? So if you don't mind, I'll ask you to just defer the admission for it and reapply for the scholarship. And I'm going to do my best to make sure that you get it, because I've looked at your credentials and everything. With you are supposed to get the scholarship, right? So, but he was like, but I don't want to give you so much hope that you see that. So try other places, try putting application elsewhere, but just also I want to strongly encourage you to try and apply again. So I knew that I had a scholarship in China, so it's like I had somewhere to put my foot, right? So I was like, okay. I told myself, okay, I'll start a PhD here. All right. So I remember I had to go back to my professor in China to tell you that, I think I'm going to stay. I think that I'm going to stay. So I remember when I told him, he was so excited. Like, oh, there's this new project, da, 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 da. I was like, but I knew that, nah, there's a high chance that I will leave. I don't want to give this man too much home. I remember I told him that I think I want to just relax for like this first semester. There's a few courses that I really want to do because of this project that I want to work on. I want to learn. And that was just my way of just buying myself time, right? And I told him that, and I reapplied for the scholarship in Australia in Melbourne University. So later on, to long story short, the scholarship came and I had to go and tell him again that I'm leaving. Right. I remember that time, he was pushing for us to start one project. He wanted us to start buying equipment and it was expensive equipment, right? This was not just buying research like materials and all that, like buying like equipment. We're going to do this laboratory hydrodynamic simulations and other things that you had to buy certain, instruments. And I was like, my goodness, if I make this, might buy this stuff and I leave. So I did my best, right, to just buy time. I was like, oh, Laushi, let's take our time. I want to really add this, component to the work, and I really want to read a lot and study a lot of stuff, to be really prepared, and he understood, he understood, and he gave it time. Then all of a sudden I just came to this one. I'm like, oh, I'm going. I think it was a shock for him. But strangely enough, that time he didn't push back. He was very excited for me, which was very strange at that time, because considering all things. So he was happy. I was like, "That's one. I know that you really want to go to Australia. You really want to." So, and I know Melbourne University is a very good school. Like, so he gave me his blessings and all that. So I got a scholarship, and I came to Australia to do my PhD in water science and engineering. Yeah. So um, that was 2015. So I did 1 year PhD in China and I left and I came to start my PhD in Australia. Yeah, so I did my PhD from 2015 to 2016 to 2019. So 3 years, 3.5 years. So did my PhD's research area in eco hydraulics, right? Looking at the impact of urbanization and climate change on the hydraulics of freshwater systems, and also ecology. So that was what my PhD was about. And yeah, so my PhD was successful. I did well. And yeah, that's I know it's very long, but that's kind of like my academic journey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so yeah, that it's always a joy listening to people's stories on this podcast. You hear so much, and it's nice. The thing about life is that when you have obstacles and you overcome them, it always gives you a good story to tell.
That's true.
It
That's
always gives
true.
you a good
That's
story to
true.
tell. So
That's true.
it's always nice to
Yeah.
hear people overcoming hurdles here and there. Yeah. So after your PhD, if I remember correctly, after your PhD, you did a postdoc, right?
Yes. Yes, that's right. So, um, after my PhD in Melbourne Uni, I got a postdoc in Monash University. I work with a research team called CLCWSC. So that's Corporate Research Center for Water Sensitive Cities. So that's more about
Nice.
water sensitive approach to manage for water management, sustainability and water management. And my part was mostly doing flood modeling, flood assessments, and how we can incorporate nature-based solutions to
Nice.
manage flood, in urban environment. Yeah, so I did
And
my
this is a
postdoc
this is a
one.
very hot topic now. It's a very hot
It
topic
is.
now.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. It is. It is. It is a very hot topic, even here in Australia and obviously across the globe. So it was kind of like a project, and that was a very good one. That project was a very good one because it was kind of like a research-based industry kind of, right,
Mm,
and which was funded by the Asian Development Bank, together with the Australian government, and we were doing it in Fiji and Indonesia, right?
yeah.
So we were trying to see how we can incorporate water sensitive approaches, right? Into managing informal urban settlement, right? And that was very, very difficult. Like if you consider most typical in developed countries, most typical urban areas, very, very formal, everything is in place, right? So when you have to try to incorporate these sustainable urban design solutions, right,
Yeah.
into this kind of environment, it's not really very daunting, right? But if you have to incorporate the same approach into very informal settlement, or informal environment, which mostly in most developing countries, their urban planning is very, very informal, right? Everybody builds anywhere, right? Not taking into consideration, how it's going to
Yeah.
impact the environment and the topography and the hydrology of the catchment. So everybody just build anywhere. So when the impact of that comes, especially when it comes to flood and all that, it's very, very severe. So us trying to incorporate that kind of sustainable approach to be able to help them to manage, you know, this water challenges that they were having it was a really, really interesting project that I worked on for my postdoc. Yeah. So I did 1 year postdoc at Monash University. Yeah.
Nice. And then how did your journey move from there into industry? Because I see that you were already getting a taste of industry. Is that what motivated you?
Yeah. Yes and no. And I would say that I had no intention of moving into the industry. If I want to be very honest, like I said, I found myself in academia. I enjoyed it, and I made a decision that this is what is for me, and this is what I'm going to do, right? So the idea of going into the industry was not really something that, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, being a passing thought, here and there, once in a while. I remember when I was doing my PhD, one of my professors was kind of like 50-50. He had his own consulting firm, right? Was also into water management. And he was 50% academic, 50% industry, right? So and when I was doing my PhD, I was also working for him as a
Mm,
project officer, research assistant, helping him. So I got a taste of it, right? But that really didn't kind of move me to say, oh, I want to do this, right? Yeah. And
nice.
so
Okay.
I wasn't really into industry, and I didn't really think too much about it, right? But what kind of started the whole thing was our very own dear COVID, right? COVID came, yeah. So when I was doing my postdoc, postdoc usually it's not really, you don't get a lot of like long-term contract, usually 1 year, two
Yeah.
years. So for me, mine was like 1 year. So the project, because the parts of the work that I had to do, it was a very long, big project. It was going to take like 5 years, but my part, right, was going to be the first stage, the first phase, right, where
Yes,
we
yeah.
do all the modeling, help them to inform everything else that they were going to do, right? So that was just for 1 year. So they employ me for that 1 year, but whilst I was in, because it was a research center, we were getting a lot of writing a lot of proposals. Our big boss, not myself, the big bosses, the big professors were writing a lot of proposals. So we were getting a lot of. I remember there was this project that we got in India, and there was one in South Africa, and I was going to be put on that project, especially the one in South Africa, which was also big, like um, the same water sensitive stuff, right?
Mm.
But unfortunately, COVID came, and you know how hard COVID hit everyone across the world. Yeah. Then all the funding, there was hold on funding, right? Every
Oh,
pre-agreement that we had, everyone was like, okay, because now every government was trying to save every little money that they
yeah.
can to be able to help the people, help the community to survive this crisis that everyone was going through. So I remember even in Australia here, most of our projects that was funded by the government were cut off.
Mm.
Because the government needs to channel the money towards other things, COVID, vaccine, and all those kind of stuff. So we lost a lot of projects, and I remember a lot of my colleagues within the academic, most people lost their job. They had to cut a lot of people off, because there were just no money. Even those who were
Yeah.
lecturers, most of them, that
Yeah.
were not on permanent contract, they had to lose because students were not coming in. So who are you even going to teach, right? So
Yeah.
for those of us who were working as research, so in Australia, and I think in most other, Western countries, all if you are working in a university as a researcher, 90%, well, not even 90, 95 or even more percent of the time, you are not a permanent staff.
Yeah.
So you are temporary. Your contract is based. So if you have a 5-year project, they give you 5-year project. But the university is not going to employ you permanently. And if there's no project, then they are paying you. What will you be doing, right?
Yeah.
Unless you are like you have like a lecturing responsibility, or you are a full-time lecturer, or you have like a percentage of lecturing and all that. But if you are just research fellow, you are on contract, right? So at that time I was
Yeah.
like, and during that time my contract was just getting close, like a few months, and I saw colleagues, so I was like, I knew that this was not going to my contract is not going to be renewed. And at that time the university, nobody was employing, like, that. So I was like, man. So
Yeah.
that was when I would say reality kind of set in for me. I was like, I need to start having a plan B, right? So for me, the idea of moving to the industry was not really like a plan. It's something that I was like, I just decided. So it was like, as it was very circumstantial, right? I will put it that way,
Mm.
right? Circumstances came in and I had to start thinking of, okay, yeah. So that was mostly for me, for the industries, kind of like starting to think about industry. So I remember it was a very, very challenging moment for me, because this is something that you have never given it a thought, right? You've kind of been in and out of it, right?
Mm.
Just because of the project that you were working on. And sometimes this project is kind of like academic and industry collaboration. So you kind of had a taste, because we do the research, we do the work, we go and present to stakeholders. So sometimes we work hand in hand with industry people. So you kind of have a little bit of, but I was like, nah, I don't think, I really want to do this, but I have to. Then I started applying for a lot of opportunities, in academic, research position, even started applying for lecturing jobs that I didn't even want to. I remember I started applying for lecturing job. And for most of and going back to when I completed school, right? When I completed uni, the postdoc position didn't come immediately, right? I was applying to a lot of them, and I wasn't getting immediately, I wasn't getting opportunities. So part of me was like, oh, just apply for lecturing. It's still academic, just apply, right? And I remember all the lecturing job that I applied for, I didn't even get one interview. But all the research position that I got, even the one that I didn't get it, I got an interview, right? Because my CV, there's nothing lecturing in there, there's nothing teaching.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember when I was doing my PhD, I had the opportunity to do tutoring, and also, for casual work, right, to earn some money or do a research assistant job, right? I was like, I'm not going to do teaching. All my friends who were doing teaching, they come back to the office and they will be complaining, like, I'm not going to do this. So on my CV, there was nothing teaching apart from the teaching assistant that I did when I finished my undergraduate. There was nothing teaching um on my CV. So for me, I understood why I didn't get any opportunity,
Mm.
because like they need to know that you've done some teaching or something, right? So yeah, so that was why later I was like, okay, let me just apply for other research positions, elsewhere, even in other research center that was outside the university. But COVID was so hard at that time that a lot of people were just simply not employing, right? A lot of people were just simply not employing. So I was like, okay, now I think I just have to, bite the hard pill, and try to look into the industry world, right? So I remember I applied for one position in one consulting firm, water management consulting firm, very, very big one in Australia here. And I got an interview, and I went there. I did an interview. I mean, it wasn't the best of the interviews, because that was my first time having any kind of industry. Because so most of the questions that they were asking me, I had to really think hard, because I had to find a way to connect my work, even though like most of the project that I worked on had some kind of industry angle. I had to, but they're like, some of them
You,
were
you,
like,
you were
this one.
referencing papers there. You were.
Oh, I was I was like, oh, this project was funded by these people, and after the work, I went to, present it to them, to industry people, like, they were, and you know how sometimes you go for an interview, you can feel it. You can feel that, they are not feeling you now. So the energy, so unfortunately, there was one that they wanted to consider me, but you know what they told me? They're like, Desmond, you are overqualified, but under
Qualified.
experience. But under experience. And I have never heard anyone told me that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like they're like, yeah, for this job. And most industry job, nobody advertise industry job and say you have to have PhD. They're like, oh, you
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
have a
yeah.
degree. They just simply say you need to
Yeah.
have a degree in civil engineering, degree in this, right? Whatever the discipline is, you need to have a degree in there. Then they'll say, okay, you need to have 5 years working experience or 5 years working on project, that kind of thing, right? So they're like, the guy was like, Desmond, can I be honest with you? I was like, oh, of course, yeah. They're like, you are overqualified but under experienced. I'm like, what do you mean? Like you, for qualification wise, yeah, you have your master's, you have your PhD, but you have no industry experience, and it would if we employ you, we have to spend a lot of time to train you, right? And that would be the same as employing a fresh undergraduate, a fresh graduate, and training the same person, right? Yes, you will come with that kind of expertise when it comes to like critical thinking and all that, but there were a lot of things that you have to learn. You just simply have to learn in order. So we feel, and Australia and I think in other Western countries, usually when they employ you, there's a certain, if you have certain qualifications, right? They just have to pay you at a certain level, right? So they're like, we can't pay you, right, based on what you
Yeah.
have. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we know that you have your PhD and that thing, so you
Yeah.
may expect to earn this. We can't
Yeah.
pay you that. And we also can't employ you as a graduate engineer. We know
Yeah.
that you will not even be happy with this. And we can't, so long story short, we just can't employ you. Right. And I was getting a lot of that. I was getting a
Mm.
lot of that. And that is one of the what that is and based from learning and hearing from a lot of people, that is one of the big challenge for people when they want to move in industry, right? And
Yeah.
that is one of the dilemma and the fear for a lot of students or a lot of people working in academic, right? The fear of moving to industry and probably feeling like they are undervalued, right? Because the industry is very, very, very experience centric, right?
Mm.
They will just throw it at your face, experience, 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 right? So I was like, and so all the other positions I was like, nah. And I would say, I mean, if I'm being honest, there was a little bit of pride also like, oh my goodness, I have my PhD, I have to go and start as a graduate engineer. Nah, bruh, no way, I'm not doing that. Right. So I was like, so I was saying, that, reality also tell you that, man, you need to start working your money, you
Yeah.
start earning some money, right?
Yeah.
So then I was fortunate enough. There was one day I was just researching online. Like if you're looking for a job every day, you are sitting behind a computer. Then I found this opportunity in a local government. So here we call it council. So council is like a local government, right? So typically we have the local government in Australia. We have local government, we have state government, and we have the federal government, right? So there was this local government, and they were looking for um, water management officer, right? And I read the position description, and there was a little bit of research, just a tiny bit of research. I was like, oh yeah, I think this one, I can't get it right. So I applied for it, and fortunately, I got an interview when they did everything, and I was fortunate enough, I got a job, but that was just for. I think it was just for 8 months, right? Because they were working on the project, right? So they were having a lot of issues with water pollution because there were a lot of development that was happening, upstream of the catchment, and they were having a lot of water pollution and all this, from stormwater and other things. So they wanted someone to come in. So they got a funding, the council, they got a funding from the government, and they set up this new position just to get somebody to come and come kind of train, right? So what happens is when people want to develop, they need to come to the local government, present their plan, and everything. That they will look at it, all right, and they need to be able to show if you're going to do any kind of development, civil, whatever, you need to present something we call the water management strategy. All right. You need to tell the local authority that this is how I'm going to manage water. during the construction, before construction, during the construction phase, after construction. So you need to provide that kind of strategy to them. And they need to be someone there who'll be able to read the strategy, understand the strategy that you've put in
Mm.
place, right? And be able to make the decision that is it going to work? And if there is anything that needs to be done, how they can inform the developers, right? They can educate them, right? And all in all that those kind of, so that was the whole thing about that role. So I think my research background and the work that I did in Indonesia was kind of like a plus for me for that role. So I was able to get that role, and I work in the local government for it, and it was contract. It was just a fixed position, right? Fixed position means
Mm.
just contract based. So I did that for 6 to 8 months, and they didn't renew the contract, right? They didn't renew the. I knew that it was just a short term, so I wasn't really shocked. So then back to square one, right? And I know that now the academic doors are blocked for now because we were still in COVID at that time. So nobody was like employing. People were even like losing their job. So now I knew that all the opportunities that are around are just industry opportunities, right? And I'm like, okay, now I think that now I can't run. I can't run. I have to just apply for it, right? So I think one of my PhD supervisor called me. Was like, oh, he had this friend. He's working with this engineering consulting. They are looking for someone with water resource engineer, but also have a little bit of eco hydraulics and geomorphology. So I had my research had a little bit of geomorphology in there. So he recommended me to them. They called me, and I went there like the same story, at the end of the day, you don't have a lot of experience, but because of the recommendation, because of who recommended me and everything, and because of that niche that I had for that part that we were looking for, they're like, oh, we're happy to take you. But fortunately for them, they didn't make me a graduate engineer. They're like, oh, this one, we can't make you a senior engineer because you don't have the experience, right? Even though based on your qualification and everything, you need to be a senior engineer, right? But we will employ you as a water resource engineer. Then we will look at you after your probation, we'll look at everything. Yeah. So that for me, I would say that was my transition into the industry,
Mm.
right? So yeah, it wasn't something that was planned. Like I didn't sit down and just said, okay, I'm tired of academia. Let me just go into industry, right? So it kind of
Yeah.
took that angle for me where I had to go through the process and just finally just make a decision, not out of choice, but just because there was other doors were closed in academia during that time, and I had to find myself in there. Yeah, so that was how
Yeah.
I got into industry.
I,
Yeah.
I remember you told me uh some experience that you had when you started working. I'm not sure if it was the first one or the later one where you were asked to write a report for a project you had done,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
you
So that
had done
was.
it like a PhD guy. And could you share that? Could you share that experience? Because I found it to be very worth it when you
Mhm.
spoke about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was um that was the one that I just talked about where
Okay.
I was employed to be a water resource engineer. And I remember my first time, like that I was supposed to write a report, right? Typically in the industry, you do a project, you just write a technical report, right? And
Mm. Yeah.
in industry, like reports, right? You just go straight to the point. Okay, this
Yeah.
was what I was employed to do. This the scope of the work. This is what I did.
Mm.
This the results. But these are my recommendation. That's all, right? So I did a work, and they're like, oh, this one write a report. Oh my goodness. I still had my academic research, hat on. I remember I sat down, I wrote
You wrote a
like a
paper.
like like a paper, did literature review. My goodness. Oh, that was not good. I did a literature review, wrote introduction literature review, like, okay, these are the questions, these are the project questions. Oh my God. Even though I didn't call it research questions, right? These are the research questions. But like project question, okay, this is what the client was, and I did everything, results and discussion. I sent it to my supervisor at that time. He read it. I was like, I think he wanted to be very nice, you know. Like this one, oh, this is a very, very detailed, good report, that you've written, and you know how like some
How many
some a
pages
lot of
was
bosses are
this?
very sensitive, they you want to just you know, pick me up before he throws me down. It wasn't like any other silly boss who said, "Hey, what have you done? What kind of work is this?" They're like, "Oh, that's a very good. I can see your research experience, your academic, PhD research experience in all the stuff that you've written. But this one, but in the industry, technical report, the client doesn't have time to read all this. He has paid you to do the work. Just tell me, what do I need to do?" And typically, for industry, for when you get a project from a client, usually it's because probably maybe they are going to do a project, they're going to do some development. The government or whoever, the authority have asked them, you need to do this. You need to, let's say if you're going to reconstruct or clear some new area, start building anything there. They want to see maybe, have you done your flood model? Have you done your water, right? They want to see that, okay, go and do this, bring it to us. Let us see that, okay, what the development that you're going to have is not going to have any adverse impact on the environment and
Yeah.
whatever resources that of interest. All right. Before we give you the permit, before you do permit to develop, right? So they just want you to do the work and tell me that, okay, help me to tell them that my project is not going to have any impact, right? That's all that I need to know. What
Yeah.
is all this literature?
Yeah.
So like the clients, they don't really care about all this literature background that you give you. They just want you to tell them that the project is good, they can get a permit. That's all that they care about. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Oh, and seriously, that was a very hard pill for me at that time, like, because I gave out my all. I felt so good about what I've done. I'm like, oh, I've done this work. So when it came back, I was like, oh man, all this, it's not important. I'm like, so it was kind of like a relearning, and that's one of the things
Mm.
that often most people that transition from academic to industry, one of the big hurdles for us, okay, is to kind of like take a step back and relearn, right? And sometimes a lot of people are not able to do that. So most people come 2 months, they run away.
Yeah.
2 months, they
Yeah.
run away because sometimes you may feel like you are back to square one. And I had that feeling, right? I had that feeling a couple of times, right? Because sometimes you're like, oh, I have to learn all this again. And oftentimes you'll be, in most, if especially if the company is big enough, you will have graduate engineers, right? And usually graduate engineers, and because I'm an engineer, that's why I'm using a lot of engineering examples. So you work in an engineering company, typically they are graduate engineers, those who have just finished undergraduate fresh. And sometimes they also have what they call undergraduate engineers. They have not really finished their final year, but they are in there,
Mm.
right, to start kind of like internship, getting
Yeah.
working experience, and all that. So it gets to a time where sometimes you feel like you are in the same soup with them, if I should put it that way, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to
Yeah.
learn a lot of things. Like there are a lot of softwares that are being used to undertake the project. If you don't know, you don't know. It doesn't matter if you have you are a professor, you have two PhDs. If you don't know, you
Yeah.
don't know. You just have to learn. And sometimes, if you have to get to a point where you have to just humble yourself, take
Yeah.
away the pride, right? And oftentimes too, you see that most of the people that you report to, they may not even have a master's degree, right?
Mm.
But they came into the industry right after undergraduate. So imagine somebody graduated at the age of 23, been in the industry for 5 years. So you are older than the person, you have more qualification because you have gone to do your master PhD. But you just have to understand that the person have been in the industry, and the industry field is a field of experience. That's what
Mm.
sells there, right? Can you do the work? It's
Yeah.
not about whether you have your PhD, two PhDs or whatever. Can you do the work for me, right?
Yeah.
So your principal engineers, your supervisors, your senior engineers, oftentimes may not even have masters, but they know a lot.
Mm.
And sometimes you just need to humble yourself and understand that you are going to go through that relearning process. And that's where oftentimes most of us who come from academic to industry, that's one of the big challenge that we have. To get to that point where we need to understand that we have to relearn, right? We have to relearn. We have to go through the process again, right? It will come to us. There are certain points where your PhD will come in handy, especially when you are like, if somebody is a fresh undergraduate or fresh graduate, usually when they approach when they approach a task, they have a problem, they get stuck, right? It doesn't really click to them that, oh, let me go and do research, let me go into, the first thing that comes to my mind, let me go and ask my supervisor, let me go and let me go and ask my team leader, right? But and the advantage that you have as a researcher or somebody who have done a PhD or been like, you start to think about a problem and try to find solutions, right? So typically when you go to your boss or whoever it is, the advantage that you have is that you've kind of identified the problems, start to think around it, and probably may have identified a couple of solutions. So you come to your supervisor with not, oh, what should I do? But, oh, I think this is the problem. I think we can do it this way, that way. What do you think? Right? Then your job of supervisor is to just to direct you and say, okay, let's go with this one, right? But probably maybe someone who doesn't have that kind of experience will just go, oh, I have a problem. What should I do? Okay, go and do it. So to be like, tax, come back. You have that advantage, right? And of course, it will depend on whatever field that you are working in. So I would say that would be like what you mentioned. It's very important that there are a lot of things that you may have to relearn, right? And you have to just put yourself in that position that you need to understand that it's going to be a process, right? And sometimes it's not easy, but the people that you are going to be reporting to, you look at it like, oh, but that shouldn't you shouldn't really focus too much. You shouldn't really focus too much on that, right? You just have to understand that it's going to be a new learning process for you.
Overqualified but underexperienced. That's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt indeed. It's going to hurt.
Wow, that was quite an episode. Overqualified but underexperienced. Thank you so much, Dr. Anim, for sharing this experience with us. We hope that you have also enjoyed listening to this conversation. Join us for the next part of this conversation as we explore deeper into this topic and discuss more about what it means to transition from one phase into another. But until then, keep living green.